So really quick, Ellen, because you are not a composer, so we wanted to find out how you got involved with the panel.
We just picked up on Glory Glory. I composed half of that with Stephanie Terrell and Stephen Terrell because we had to come up with music, and I hated the music. So we stayed there and composed 18 songs and used some of them. But I'm not a composer like them. No.
Are you going to compose any more, though?
I have. I've written a lot of lyrics. But I'm right now writing stuff, so I have to deal with that. And they're the composers. I'm just the gab machine.
You're the rock star.
Absolutely. And do you have any projects in the works that...
Right now?
Yes,
I'm actually going to work on 2 albums, and I'm going to be doing some club work that we're going to do that too. An album, I just did... a Christmas concert with DC Gayman's Chorus, and so we're taking that and then adding like songs of Hallelujah, Winter Song, Winter's Night with You.
It's the one with Steve.
Steve.
I haven't seen you since you met Steve.
No, and I love him. And the cellos. So we're going to do a Christmas album and another album and start doing some clubs. So that's what I'm doing right now and still looking.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So,
James.
Or Jim.
I know everyone calls him
James or Jim.
I call him Sweet James.
Yes.
Oh, okay, Sweet James. So, can you tell us how you got started on the show that you're working on?
On Wilfred?
Yes.
You know,
did you do research going into the pot smoking?
I did. How did I? I did some very
in depth.
Yeah, it took hours.
Research.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God,
because
how many
really
hours and hours it took. I couldn't believe it.
It's very important what you do for your art
In the
form.
beginning, I thought it was only going to take 15 minutes, and it ended up taking hours that day.
It's very tough. What you've had to do.
Time just passes like this, all this research. But it's an important part dedicated to your craft.
Did you walk around with a suit on?
With a suit?
Do you know the suit is not as comfortable as you might think it is.
Yes, I didn't think so, especially when he has to go to the bathroom.
Well, there's a flap.
The flap is in the back, though.
There's a flap, yes.
What about the flap at the front?
I'm not allowed to do that on set.
Don't worry. Only a few million people see it.
I love the idea of the whistle, by the way.
The whistling, yeah. How did I get on the gig?
How did you get involved? Yes.
Oh, you know what it was? It was actually my agent, Bryce Gate at ICN, had a relationship with David Zuckerman. And the first day I signed with the agency, they were like, "Here you go. Here's look at this pilot." And I was like, so I looked at it, I'm like, "Oh, I know how this goes." So I wrote the little whistling tune, the opening scene of Ryan committing suicide. And I wrote this like there's a little Django Reinhardt whistle thing, and said, "How about this?" They were like, "Great, just now do it for the rest of the show." So it was. We instantly, I didn't have to compete against anyone. I had a meeting with Jason Gann and David Zuckerman and Randall
Leinhart. I think something had to do with he had an Emmy. And so he walks in and goes,
I can get the meeting.
Here's my resume.
Here's my resume.
I wear it around my neck now.
It's hanging.
All I had to say to James is, so how heavy is it?
It's heavy.
So how long does the process take to get this one episode done?
I can do. You know what? I got them pretty quick. There's not a lot of music in Wilfred. I write more than is heard. So, for example, like.
And by the way, this is really wonderful to know this about him. His ego, even though it seems like he's really cool about that. He'll write so much, and if you use this, he says, "Oh, it's fine, it's cool." And a lot of other people would get negative, and he never does. It's really a great thing. He's very generous as someone to work with.
She doesn't like you at all.
Not at all. I'm a complete jerk.
Lady.
That's right.
Oh yeah, that 20 bucks.
10% off the top, off the gross points, right? Not
what inspired you with music? Did you have it? Was it rock or an artist, or was it classical music?
Like everybody has their first thing. Like if you're a wine enthusiast, there's one bottle that does it for you. For me, it was Led Zeppelin. My sister played guitar. She's older than I am. Today's her birthday, actually. And
happy birthday!
She needed an audition piece for our contemporary band in high school. And so I asked her, I'm like, she's an acoustic guitar player, asking friends, like, what song should she use? And everyone's like, oh, you Stairway to Heaven. I'm like, I never heard this song before. So I got the sheet music for her and got her. I went into Sam Goody, I swear to God, and asked, can I have this single? This is 1990. This is 1990, and I asked for the single to Stairway to Heaven. And they're like, you're going to have to buy the record. I'm like, it's not the single's not in there? Like, no, the single hasn't been out for 20 years. No need to rub it in. So I got the record, and then she could care less about this stuff. And I'm like, well, I'll listen to it, and I listened to the album that
Is
summer.
that Come Down on Your Throne? Is that one?
Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin.
Down on your throne. No, that's another song. Excuse me. Sorry, I
No,
drift.
There's a yeah. It's,
You know the
it's,
guitar.
It's the one song you're not allowed to play in any music stores. Yes.
Stairway to Heaven.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I learned, like, I taught myself every song I bought every album after that, and I got really good at guitar and I developed a really good ear because I would just listen to it and then I'm like, oh, I know where that is on the guitar. After months and months of just sitting, rewind, play, rewind.
What was the day you heard the song? Did you play it first, or did you hear it in your head?
There was this one time I was writing. I wrote a musical in college that no one's ever heard of. Yeah, a children's musical. And I was on the beach. I couldn't get the opening number done. I just couldn't get it. And I was fishing with my dad, and it popped into my head. I'm like, oh, I know how that goes. I'm like, I got to write this down, but I'm on the beach with a fishing pole. What am I going to do? So I'm like, stick. I'm like, remember. Like, I had to do this the whole way home. Try to focus. Because it's like lying is to the left, memory's up. When you see people talk and go memory, everybody looks up. So it was like kind of how to do this.
Memory, you look up. Is that what I said?
Up and to the left.
Everybody's up, yeah. Memory's
Look up
there.
and to the left.
What's to the left?
You look
Memory?
up to the left. It's your memory recall.
So that was really the first time I.
Your heartstrings were plucked.
Yeah.
That's
It just
Okay,
popped
we're
into my
done.
head, and I had a lot of friends like, oh, that's the best thing you've ever done. I'm like, I was on the beach.
Well, fantastic.
I always wonder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's how.
As a matter of fact,
Do any characters you write about more than others? Or?
Yes, absolutely. Depends on like their importance in the story and the story arc for the season. If it's a really important character, like Bill or Eric or Sookie, then obviously they have their own music. But if it's a more minor character, sometimes they'll have like a motif or something. But otherwise, it's not a theme at that point. So yeah.
Well, I had a two-parter. I know you compose for both TV and for film, and I know I looked at your credits, and you've got two films that I really stuck in my mind: Cabin Fever.
Yep.
And what's the other one? I guess I left it out. I'm having a moment here. Let's see if only a second here. Yeah. So it was Grindhouse.
Oh right.
You did a collaboration in Grindhouse.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Okay. So did you make music for one of the segments in Grindhouse, or did you?
I did. So Eli Roth, who I worked with on Cabin Fever, Hostel, and Hostel 2, and then he produced Last Exorcism. He was asked by Quentin to do a trailer for a horror movie, which is in between Quentin's and Robert's movies. Okay. And it was called Thanksgiving.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Thanksgiving. And so it was that trailer. Well, interestingly, what ended up happening, so I wrote a bunch of music for it, and Eli had put in the music for Creepshow.
Okay.
And so a lot of it actually ended up being Creepshow stuff, but there was some of my stuff in there. But that was a pretty minor contribution.
Well, we were all hoping that they would take, because that would be one of the ones that they could spin off.
I think Eli's like debating it.
Still, okay.
I think so. Who knows?
Because I know Machete was the first one that they
it's
spun
true.
off.
That's exactly right.
Well, when you do music for films like that, like Cabin in the Woods type films, I mean, is there an emphasis on certain instruments, more percussion, or just what you're feeling?
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. And Eli Roth is a really fun director to work with because he and I love horror movies so much, and so we get to kind of just we have very much the same artistic sensibilities, and so I just try a bunch of stuff, and he's usually into it. So yeah.
So like you give Eli something that you like, and you kind of go back and forth.
Exactly.
And then you find that certain sound, that tone, that feeling.
Exactly. Yeah, and that movie Cabin Fever is very like super. In your face and rustic and strange, and so that was the score kind of took on those characteristics.
I was gonna say I've never seen scope used that way before. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, but it's just it was one of those with the longest punchline I've ever seen in my life.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I can't even say what it is. It's like I said, I really like both films.
Cool. Thank you.
So can you share with us how you got started on True Blood and kind of take us through the process of how you compose for each episode?
Absolutely. So I got a call out of the blue from Alan Ball called my agent, his people did, and they had put my music from a movie I did called Hostel, which is a horror movie Eli Roth directed, into the pilot episode of True Blood. And I went in for the meeting and I didn't think it was quite right, and I told them that, and they were like blown away that a composer had come in and like shot down his own music. They said, well, what would you do? And so I pitched them an idea, and they loved the idea, and so I got the job. And the thing I had to nail at the beginning was the love theme of Bill and Sookie, those characters, and so I shared in the panel that sometimes some of my most successful music comes in the very last minute, and that was one of those situations where I wrote that theme like 10 minutes before they showed up, and it ended up being really wonderful. So yeah.
Wow, interesting. Can you share with us, Nathan, was there anyone who influenced you to make you want to start writing and composing music?
I think just movies, and I remember Max Steiner's score to Gone with the Wind as a kid. That was such an amazingly beautiful score, and then the classics that I'm sure all these guys would say, John Williams, in Steven Spielberg's movies or Star Wars and George Lucas's movies. Those guys were doing something really wonderful. So yeah.
Well, is there any pieces, like I know you mentioned John Williams, any pieces that you like? Because there's things that stand out to me. Like I'll go back to YouTube and look up. Is there anything that you feel like YouTubing or looking on YouTube?
Well, you know what? In terms of scores that I love, there's a score. Wojciech Kilar's an old Polish guy who wrote this score to Dracula, Coppola's movie. Oh yes. That is an amazing score. That's like an amazing piece of concert music, and so that's one of those that I've had a relationship with over the years in terms of returning to. It's an amazing score, yeah. But no, there's certainly, there are so many great guys. Alexander Desplat is sort of the guy who I look at and like, wow, I would love that career. Like he consistently chooses to work with, or really interesting directors choose to work with him. So it's really. So
I think he did a great job on King's Speech, right? Wasn't it?
Yep, he did King's Speech. He did Benjamin Button. He did Terry Malick's latest movie.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, he did that. He's done so many great films. Like he's just one of the Harry Potters. He did.
Oh,
so yeah, so it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Okay, well, tell us how you got involved with your show and what your process is for how you create for each episode.
Okay, well, it sort of depends on which project we're talking about. So, I'm working right now on a new show for ABC. That's going to premiere on April 7th, and that process, if you want to hear about that one, is
it all done? Have you done all the episodes for it
None
already?
of the episodes.
Okay, you haven't started yet.
We haven't started yet.
Okay.
The clip in the panel was for the show Avengers, and that one, they showed the theme song that I wrote for that. So I could talk about
Which was brilliant.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So, well, can you tell us what type of music you listen to? Because that one had a rock edge to it.
It definitely did.
How you decide what type of music you're going to put along with that.
Yeah, that one, I got to have a lot of creative freedom to, the director wasn't exactly sure what was wanted for the show. So we came up with a concept of, okay, let's give it a good heavy rock kind of feel that kind of has a modern kind of Foo Fighters vibe, but at the same time kind of harkens back to classic rock bands like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin with kind of like a riff driving through it. It kind of has this that kind of riff underneath it. So, yeah, okay, good. So you know what I'm talking about with the riff. So, but then of course, because it's a drama, we wanted to have this kind of big orchestral epic beginning of it. So we kind of started that way with kind of like your dramatic hits, and then kind of put this little triumphant little string to kind of segue into the song, and then hit the song that way. So that was kind of all part of what we nailed down as the approach before I started writing the song. And then once we had that approach, then it was, okay, now make it so. Okay. So that was the process.
You yourself, did you start off as a musician playing an instrument and then went into writing, or were you more interested in the composition of it and then instruments?
As a kid, you mean, early on?
Yeah.
I mean, I started loving music at a pretty young age. I started playing the piano. I was classically trained, but I really, really loved bands like the Beatles. I was a big Beatles fan, and I used to sit on the piano and play songs and sing them, and I got pretty good. I actually learned. I had a classical piano teacher, but I also had a piano teacher who taught me music theory and how to just improvise your own part just with the chord charts. So I got good at that. And so that was sort of like something that after getting that skill helped me segue into composing, understanding the music theory, and being able to kind of make up parts as I go along. So I didn't set out to be a composer. I did decide to study music just because I loved it, and so I actually went to UCLA, started out as a piano performance major, and then halfway through I switched to composition major. Coincidentally, I was an intern during college with Mark, who did Once Upon a Time. That was in an alternate universe called the 1980s when that happened. And so, yeah, that Mark was really the person who I would blame, or credit, I should say, for me having decided I wanted to pursue this path. I got to work with him and watch him do the process of scoring films, and totally fell in love with that process, and kind of got bit by the bug of like, ooh, I want to do that. And so that was the point where I said, okay, I'm going to give it a go and try to pursue that as a composer.
Okay. Now you get the scenes and then you compose to the scenes. Do you ever bring in any other elements of like your personal life, or what inspires you and beyond just the scenes themselves? Or is it specifically just the scenes?
It kind of depends on the project. I mean, with television, you have such a short turnaround time that there's not a lot of room to kind of experiment. So I really try as much as I can at this point in my life to nail down with the producer what the approach that they're looking for. Sometimes, like we talked about, they'll put temp music in there, and that'll kind of give me a starting place. So, but if they don't put the temp music in there, sometimes I'll suggest, hey, how about we take this kind of an approach, or maybe I'll even send them a little like YouTube clip and say, like, does this kind of sound like something that might work? You know, just to give us a place, a commonality to start from. You know.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. So anyway, so tell us how you got started with both of your shows. Were you approached? Did you approach them? How did you get involved?
Want me to go?
Shows, multiple shows that you're involved with.
How did I get started? Okay. Every show's a little bit different. I mean, I do find that people in post-production tend to move in packs. I mean, once you start to have relationships, it may not even be the director or the producer, it could be the editor. My first show was Buffy the Vampire Slayer in Los Angeles. And a few people from Buffy went on to a show called True Calling. In fact, one of the cast, Eliza Dushku, went on to True Calling. And so my name was put into the hat. There's really a hat. I've never physically seen it, but it's there on every show. And the 3 or 4 key decision makers seem to always have a composer friend, and I guess if I can be somebody's composer friend, it sort of seems to be the ticket. And then sometimes it's an audition process. I've had blind auditions where they'll take those 3 or 4 people on the short list and we'll compose to some scenes, and they'll listen to it and not see who it was. It'll be mystery composer number 1, mystery composer number 2, and then they'll pick that way.
In my case, there was a new guy who was hired to head up the TV animation world at Disney, and he was looking for some fresh, more guitar player kind of composers, and that was the direction I was going in, and I just never let him down. It started out with songs, where I wrote the theme song to Lilo and Stitch, the TV show, and the theme song to the Emperor's New School, and as he rose in the ranks, he just stayed loyal to me. So I was his composer friend, as he put. And when Phineas, so it was a relationship with this guy that turned me into a composer. And then when Phineas and Ferb came along, I had done enough work where he wasn't afraid to pitch me for that show. And I started out making them really happy with songs, and then I proved I could do underscore. And the relationship continues.
Can you walk us through the process of how you do the composition for your shows?
Yeah. In my case, it's a very it's songs and underscore, and they're separate. So they'll do the songs first, and if I'm in song world, I'm trying to think like a record producer on a deadline, which I love to do. I love to make records, and I know what they want because they'll tell me this is a hardcore rocker, this is an 80s rock, this is a grungy rocker, this is a total Aladdin show tune. And I'll just go in that direction, and it's broadened my horizons by forcing myself to study all the great whatever, whether it's John Williams or whether it's Def Leppard. So I've gotten to really go into different worlds of music, and then the underscore happens real quickly. After the song is done months later, we'll look at the whole episode, and then I'll have to go into the samples and classical and just underscore every moment that they want, whether it's laying out for jokes or doing a dark Eastern European scary thing or Perry the Platypus, James Bond stuff. It'll be pretty laid out for me. Not a lot of room for speculation on the underscore for me. I think it's different for him. He'll tell you.
I wonder if overall the whole process of live action is a little more succinct than animated, because rarely do I have to deal with songs. I come in at the very end of the process. Sometimes I get scripts, but unless there's something that involves shooting on set, which a few times has been, I'll just the first I'll see of an episode is when it's locked, which means that all the editing timing is all being determined, and at that point it's there's temporary music in the episode already. I think it's as they're cutting it together, some scenes just need the music, and they can't really even show it to the network without having something in there. So they'll cut it to a piece of pre-existing music, whether it's from the same project or from a different project. And it's just at least a launching point for conversation as to what they're looking for. Maybe they'll tell me what they didn't like about the temp music they put in, what they want me to do differently. And then I take all those notes from we have an initial meeting on every show called a spotting session. And I'll take all those notes, and I'll listen to the temporary music and try to understand what they're going for, and then I'll just start improvising and see what makes me feel the way I want the audience to feel when they watch the final show.
And what brought both of you into composition? Was that something that you wanted to do? Did you discover it in school, or at what point did you decide you wanted to do this?
Well, for me, it was more of a opportunity that came knocking. It wasn't like I was not one of those people that said, I want to be a composer, or I want to be a doctor, and I went to school to be a composer. I was a guitar player, and I still am, and I started to see, broaden my horizons, and opportunities came naturally. I didn't knock on a door. I'm lucky that way that they came to me, and I said, wow, I really like this. This is what I'm going to do now, and I've made it happen for myself.
I like to think it's in my blood. I'm adopted, but on both sides, the birth family and the adopted family, both my great-grandfathers were involved in music for movies. One of them was arranged, and back in that day, they were more of arrangers than composers. They would take excerpts of classical music and played over certain scenes in the silent movies. And interesting. I heard that the whole reason they had music in the first place was because the projector was so loud it was distracting. They needed something to.
Is that true?
I believe
I
it.
believe it too. Such an
If it wasn't, it
afterthought.
sounded
No, let's fill it up with music.
It's kind of a bizarre thing that there is, for something that a medium that relies on us to suspend our disbelief, that there would be music playing. It's a bit of a weird thing, but somehow, yeah, we've become
Good to know.
right.
Oh my God.
Thank